Outside the 10 Downing Street, she accepted that she'd lost the faith of her party and said that she would step down, becoming the shortest-serving Prime Minister as far as the British history is concerned. But the signs were already coming. Growing resentment on the ground, a taxation move that had upset many, and the rising economic challenges. Appointed on the 6th of September, she was forced last week to sack her finance minister and her closest political ally and abandon almost all her economic program after their plans for vast unfunded tax cuts crashed the pound and the British bonds, which also resulted in the approval ratings for her and the Conservative Party collapsing. With Liz Truss gone, the ex-finance minister Rishi Sunak is now being seen as the front-runner along with Penny Mordaunt. But we could also see the return of former Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who was ousted in July when his ministers resigned to force him out of power. The question now is, what will this instability mean for the United Kingdom? And more importantly, will we see a consensus on the unity as far as the candidate is concerned?
I cannot deliver the mandate on which I was elected.
Now, before we talk to you about the larger issues of who can really take United Kingdom out of this mess, first let's talk to you about the reasons as to why Liz Truss was forced to step down and become the shortest serving Prime Minister all in a span of 45 days. The first reason was £45 billion unplanned package of tax cuts. That move to tax the rich didn't go down well with a lot on the ground. The second main reason, the pound tumbled to an all-time low, as I said in my introduction, which resulted in those credit ratings falling as well. Reason number 3, the party whips accused of using heavy-handed tactics. But that was not all. Appointment of loyalists for key jobs was also seen as a reason for growing resentment against Liz Truss. And then the high-profile exits lost 2 ministers in just a span of these 40 to 45 days. With Liz Truss gone, the other big question is, who is going to be the future Prime Minister of the United Kingdom? Who are these front-runners? Rishi Sunak's name is now back in running. So let's do a SWOT analysis of what really is work in favor of Rishi Sunak and what goes against him. He has the experience of economic crisis fighting. He is an ex-finance minister, but what goes against him may lead to intensified Tory infighting, and he didn't really manage to beat Liz Truss when the contest happened earlier. Then let's talk to you about the other big contender. Yes, Boris Johnson's name is also now back. Only leader to have won trust of Conservative MPs and members. But what goes against him, that Partygate scandal, was recently ousted as the Prime Minister for violating COVID rules. So that could still have a lot of resentment against him on the ground. The other front-runner, Penny Mordaunt, what actually works in her favor, demonstrated her leadership in recent chaotic weeks. But what goes against her was unsuccessful in her bid to become the Prime Minister after we'd seen the departure of Boris Johnson. Let's also now pull up the other front-runner, Ben Wallace. What's in his favor? Praised for his handling of the Ukraine crisis. But what goes against him? Not much popular as compared to Sunak and the other frontrunners who are being seen. Another frontrunner name is Kemi Badenoch. What is in her favor has support of many senior Conservative leaders, but what could possibly go against her? Lacks experience as far as handling of government affairs is concerned. And lastly, we also have the name of Suella Braverman, the minister who's resigned. praised as a figurehead of the right of the party, but what goes against? Tenure as the Home Secretary was very, very controversial. So we'll really have to see which of these frontrunners actually make it. But the larger question is, out of these, whoever actually becomes the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, do they have it in them to pull United Kingdom of this mess that it continues to face, specifically the economic challenges? Let me now bring in my colleague Sanjay Suri, who's been tracking all these developments. He's now joining us live on the broadcast. Sanjay, what are the kind of discussions that are taking place on the ground as far as who is this one person who could possibly magically change things for the United Kingdom?
Well, the most likely one appears to be Boris Johnson. I have just been speaking a very short while back with a very senior and well-informed member and a leader of the Conservative Party who tells me that talks are currently underway between Boris Johnson's team and Rishi Sunak's team. And this follows the latest estimated count of the extent of support that suggests that about an hour back, the count was about 60 declaring support for Rishi Sunak and as many for Boris Johnson, with about 20 for Penny Mordaunt. It would appear that Penny Mordaunt would drop out. Ben Wallace has already dropped out, and it's likely that Penny Mordaunt's support will transfer to Boris Johnson.
Interesting.
If then this becomes a runoff between the two, it may well not proceed to the final stage where members are asked to vote, because were it to come to that, clearly Boris Johnson would win and whoever stands against him at that level would lose. And if the two front runners at the moment appear to be Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak, and the two teams are currently in talks, it points to a direction where we could see Boris Johnson come in with some sort of understanding with Rishi Sunak. To what end, of course, we have not seen yet. It's not been announced yet. In fact, it is currently being negotiated, but it's pointing that way.
Sanjay, it's very interesting to what you're saying. If it actually finally boils down to Boris Johnson versus Rishi Sunak, the supporters of Boris Johnson are not going to be very happy, because Rishi Sunak was seen as the man who actually initiated the rebellion against Boris Johnson, which led to his departure from 10 Downing Street. But despite all the controversy, the Partygate scandal, flouting of COVID protocols, does Boris Johnson still enjoy popularity among the masses?
Well, if it talking about the masses, that's a different question, but that's not currently an issue. We are not into a general election.
True.
We are into an election within the narrow circles of the Conservative Party, and one circle narrower than the other, the first circle being the Conservative MPs. That is where the vote is. And MPs are, well, let's put it this way, an adaptable species. Certainly they have seen the level of opposition to him among people and within the party. But we've seen very tumultuous times in recent weeks, as you've been pointing out, and the MPs are now focusing on someone who can stabilize the party.
True.
And lead it credibly into the next election. And again, there's a strategic factor here, because if 357 MPs can vote and 100 is needed as the minimal threshold, theoretically 3 can go through. But really it is pointing towards 2 in the front now.
Okay.
And if it is 2, then certainly the person who is against the one who is other than Boris Johnson will back out for sure. And that most credible, the second most credible candidate is Rishi Sunak.
Rishi Sunak,
So
right.
Rishi Sunak may have more credibility morally and as a leader, but as numbers go, it's pointing to Boris Johnson.
Right. Sanjay, before I let you go quickly, again, from what your sources are telling, your credible sources on the ground, how soon could we see a finality on a name?
Much sooner than we think. As we know, this whole round has been fast-tracked. The last went on more than 2 months. This has been cut down to 1 week. It's been fast-tracked, but it may be fast-tracked yet further. And if it appears that there are only 2 credible candidates and Boris Johnson is one of them, the other may well not contest, and we could have a decision very soon and as early as Monday.
Okay, Sanjay, we leave the conversation there. Appreciate you getting us all those details. Keep a close eye on all those developments for us. Before I bring in my guests, I quickly also now want to talk to you about what the stepping down of Liz Truss means as far as the broader picture for the United Kingdom and also for the party. Now, Liz Truss becomes the third Conservative Prime Minister to be toppled in a row. As I pointed out, just in a span of 45 days, she was forced to step down. Economic instability led to Liz Truss's disastrous tenure. Inflation, taxation, all of these issues still continue to be a headache for whoever steps in and becomes the new Prime Minister. The challenge before the next Prime Minister will be, as I said, to revive the economy and provide stability for the party and for the country at large. The next Prime Minister might think to partially, maybe, reverse Brexit, but we'll really have to see. So the question that we're asking then this evening is, with Liz Truss gone, who can really pull United Kingdom out of this mess? Let me also now bring in our guest to take this discussion forward. We have Lord Remy Ranger, member, House of Lord and Brit businessman. We have Maximilian Hess, Central Asia Fellow in the Eurasia Programme at the Foreign Policy Research Institute. We also have Sanku Hassan Arud, researcher, political economy, King's College London. And we also have the director at MATV, Kuldeep Shekhawat. Good to have all of you on the broadcast with us. Lord Ranger, let me begin the conversation with you. 45 days is all it took for Liz Truss being forced to step down. Did you already see it coming?
Yes, I did. Because the mistake number one, you do not promise what you can't deliver. So that was number one. Mistake number two, she failed to unite the party. She failed to appoint the talent within the party to be in her cabinet. All she did was to appoint her friends who ticked the box and supported her. So that was number three. She knew that she was not popular in the parliament. Her own colleagues did not support her. So she should have gone out of the way to unite the party, to make sure all those people who were disgruntled will not turn on her. So therefore, one mistake led to another to another. And the worst thing is having the grassroots plant a prime minister in a House of Commons where that person has to work, and if the person doesn't have the support of his or her colleagues, then it's a non-starter. We saw that with Jeremy Corbyn. He was also planted by the grassroots, because grassroots have no idea of the ability or the caliber of that person. It's only the colleagues know who work with that person. Grassroots will have a perception. They look at it, maybe they looked at a brown face, or they looked at a guy from Indian origin, and they had their own perception. We don't know, but I think the real test is how his or her colleagues look at that person and how they feel to work with that person. So everything was wrong. One wrong led to the another to the another. But thank God we have a robust democracy, and we can really, the market reacted because Liz Truss did not take into account the advice of those experts, the economist or the Bank of England, before she brought the
Lord Ranger, while you might be saying that, this is still a vibrant democracy where if you don't, hold up to the promises that you've made, then you will be forced to go out. But this is a pattern that is also becoming extremely dangerous to the stability of the country at large. I'll get to that in just a bit. I quickly also want to understand from you, it took just about 45 days. Usually the patterns that we see with leaders who've been recently inducted or, people in these political positions, that it's usually at their end of their tenure when policies have failed, they've been implemented for a while, that you see this sort of resentment on the ground. But all of this to happen in 45 days is quite baffling.
But once you have a very weak foundation, then building will collapse, because Liz Truss came with promises she could not deliver, and they were unsustainable. Rishi repeatedly challenged her, warned her that her policies were flawed, but she did not listen, and then market reacted, because there is a market, and also the British democracy is very stable. Civil servants are in place. They're all people. Members of parliament come and go, the policies remain there for the national interest. And therefore, I think looking forward, we need to bring a person who was the most popular candidate, Rishi Sunak, among his colleagues, the one who has the experience to stabilize the economy, because the economy is very, very important factor in
Sure.
changing the mood of the voters, because we are facing unprecedented challenges because
True.
of Russian invasion in Ukraine. Fuel prices have gone through the roof. Food prices have gone through the roof. Inflation is 10%. People are unable to pay their mortgages. So we need somebody with experience of Rishi Sunak, who during the pandemic held the economy steady and made sure with his furlough scheme, jobs were saved,
Okay.
livelihoods were saved, and we did not have that shock which other countries faced. So therefore, I think for the sake of national prosperity and for
So,
the unity
Lord
of the
Ranger, while
party,
you might see
Rishi,
Rishi Sunak as the front runner today, the reality also is that Liz Truss had actually beat him when that contest happened after Boris Johnson's departure. So, does he have it in him to actually take the country forward? That's something that I will reserve for the later part of the show. But Maximilian, I want to bring you in today. Whoever wins this so-called race is already a loser, because look at what you're inheriting. You're not inheriting a stable economy. You're seeing the worst of the economic crisis, inflation. The pound has tumbled to its low. We've seen bonds being hit. Unemployment again is a huge crisis. How difficult is it going to be for whoever steps in at this point?
Well, it's certainly going to be extremely challenging. Political fortunes for a party can change very quickly. We saw the Conservatives record their worst result in modern history in early 2019 in the European Parliament elections, before Boris then won that 80-seat majority that they're now defending at the end of 2019. But for whoever wins now, it's a very poisoned chalice because the economic headwinds are so great.
True.
Inflation is still proving untamed. Rates likely still have to rise further, and they need to gain the credibility of the markets. And I do think that's the argument that some of Rishi Sunak's backers, we just heard, will be making, that he has that. But that was a very, very different fiscal environment, and there were certainly plenty of mistakes made at the Treasury then as well, including with spending and fraud that still remains under investigation. So it will be a poison chalice. I think that's the right term to whoever wins.
Right. I want to talk to you about the decisions that went wrong for Liz Truss. Even when she took on post the pandemic, it wasn't an easy challenge. And that was a situation of economies across the world. Inflation was at an all-time high. That particular decision of wanting to tax the rich to try and contain this, do you think that's where it all began to go downfall for her?
I think that certainly triggered a lot of panic in the markets in the way that she did it, without consulting the budgetary authorities, and then also not funding those tax cuts with any changes in spending, and saying that they wouldn't do so for 2 months. So I think that's why we saw Britain experience more volatility in its gilt markets and a larger decline in the pound against the dollar, many other Western European currencies. But those headwinds are ones that face the region as a whole. It's not as if they're unique to the United Kingdom.
Okay. I want to bring in Sanku Arun also in the conversation. With Liz Truss gone, of course, the larger question now is who next? Many on the ground are saying that Rishi Sunak becomes one of the biggest frontrunners, also Boris Johnson. As far as Rishi Sunak is concerned, what is the sentiment on the ground? Is he a man who's going to be accepted to have that faith and believe that he can take United Kingdom off the mess that it's facing today?
So when it comes to this Liz Truss, she behaved like a libertarian maniac who was living in a fantasy world of free market fallacious economics, which is completely disconnected from reality. So so her fiscal stimulus has just contributed to the inflation. So she doesn't have any pragmatic real agenda to address the inflationary crisis. So when it comes to the Sunak, he's being very pragmatic. He doesn't want to go towards the far right, towards the libertarianism of extreme right. So I think he has an extreme chances, because if you see his previous discussions, he was talking about not making the mortgage rates go high. So in this context, I feel like, if Rishi Sunak comes up with pragmatic ideology, like, which we have witnessed to an extent in the previous,
Okay.
in debates, I think now the Tory membership might have come to the senses, like, going towards like extreme far right, economic policies would, like, like it's like a digging their own grave. So I think for them right now is the rational choice would be like, sticking to Rishi Sunak, like, if they want to have any chance in the next elections. Going back towards like Boris Johnson would be like, at the optics levels, like, Labour would exploit it like really badly. I don't think like falling on like Boris Johnson would be an option for them. So right now I see Rishi Sunak as a viable pragmatic alternative.
Okay. Kuldeep, I want to bring you also in the conversation. If Rishi Sunak is one of the front runners, the other front runner is also being seen as Boris Johnson, despite all the controversies that we saw as far as the Partygate scandal is concerned. If Boris Johnson couldn't do it earlier, why is he still being seen as a front runner now that the challenges have only increased?
See, Boris Johnson didn't go because of the work. He was doing a fairly good job, but he went because of the scandals, because of his scandals during the COVID. So Boris
But a
Johnson
leader needs to
been,
support. He needs the support of his party and the leaders that he's working with and the public. He didn't have the support of the team that he was working with. He was forced out.
team. See, team out of the entire team, only a few resigned at that moment of time, but they were senior leaders, like Rishi resigned, and one more resigned. Because of that, he thought it's wise to go away. But now situation has turned around, and it seems to all of us sitting here in London that for Conservative Party to survive, I don't think so there is any other good person to lead this party other than Boris Johnson. He came in power in 2019 with very thumping majority. It was general elections and he beat the other part, Labour hands down. So now we are nearing 24. And as far as Conservative Party is concerned, they would be looking at somebody who can lead them to the elections again. So they will not go, as far as I understand the situation as of now, they will not go with Rishi at this moment of time. They will go with Boris Johnson at this moment of time. So that's what is the most probable thing that is going to happen. Boris Johnson will be coming back because he fought election and fought very bravely, and he did a wonderful job by securing a historic margin against the Labour. Secondly, some of the senior leaders I've been speaking to, like Ben Wallace, he said, I'm moving out of this contest and I'm putting my weight behind Boris Johnson. He never said he's going to put his weight behind Rishi. Rishi is a wonderful person. Personally, if you ask me, yes, we would like him to come to power. But at this moment of time, the Conservative policy and the politics within the party is saying Boris is the best bet for us. Let us bet for him. So the situation is going towards that, and let us see what happens. Today, they have around a gap of 6 to 7% between two of them. One is having 62 members, and another is having 56 members, which will go to above 100 in a day's time. Maybe by tomorrow, it will be sorted out that who's going to lead this country for the next 2 years.
Okay.
So this is where we are.
Okay. Lord Ranger, I want to give you the final word. What I want to understand is whoever comes in, whether Rishi Sunak or Boris Johnson, makes a comeback. What does this change of leaders at such short intervals mean for the country at large at a time when you're already seeing a lot of disruptions happening globally?
First of all, every political party looks at a leader who can win election. If they can't win election, they cannot be in the government. So therefore, first of all, I'm very doubtful that Boris can come back because he was thrown out by his own party members. But if he comes back, then he is a vote winner among the Labour supporter as well, not just in the Conservative. He's a very charismatic figure. He was mayor of London for twice, which is a predominantly Labour area. So his own personality, his own charisma, his own charm is matchless. That's all I can say. But if Boris doesn't come, then Rishi is the right man to lead the party because he has the pragmatism which is required at this point when we are going through economic meltdown, when the country is in serious financial problem, inflation high, mortgages high, and the pound weak. So therefore, we need somebody who will have a steady hand on the economy. So Rishi is the best person if Boris doesn't come. If Boris come, then Boris will be popular with the grassroots as well, more than Rishi.
Okay. Maximilian, I'll give you the final word. I quickly just want to understand that, as my colleague Sanjay was pointing at the start of the show, that decisions are happening at such a fast pace that we could actually have a finality of a name faster than we would have imagined. How do you see this playing out? Do you see Boris Johnson making a comeback, or do you see Rishi Sunak, who lost the last contest against Liz Truss, actually making the cut?
I think it's very much all still to play for. We're seeing a lot of jostling by both of their teams, as well as, of course, by Penny Mordaunt's team. They're really expected to be the three main candidates at this stage. Although it's so early, things could still emerge. But really, I think where we stand right now is that Rishi Sunak is looking to try to build up enough support amongst the parliamentary party while ensuring that Boris Johnson, who did burn so many bridges with his colleagues just a few weeks ago, he's able to keep him below that 100-vote threshold to go to the second round. And then it could be an arrangement if it's, say, Rishi and Penny, where they don't even go to the vote amongst members that second round, and instead one or the other agrees to step back. But of course, that's why it's so hard for them to make a deal with one another, because they both want to be prime minister.
Absolutely. The ambitions are very clear for both these individuals. Unfortunately, I will have to leave that conversation there. 10 Downing Street will have a new resident. Who will that be? Apparently just a matter of days. I'm going to leave that conversation there, thanking all my guests. Pleasure speaking to all of you. We quickly also want to shift our focus to the other big story that we tracked right through the day, which came from West Bengal. There was chaos at Kolkata's Salt Lake as the teacher eligibility test candidates protested, demanding their appointment letters. The BJP and the Congress also protested, accusing the Mamata Banerjee government of corruption in the appointment of teachers. BJP says Mamata Banerjee government has sold teachers' posts to the highest bidders. Protesters claim they've qualified but were omitted from the merit list. Multiple protesters were detained by the cops. Section 144 had also been imposed in the area.
Bengal BJP on the streets of Kolkata protesting police action against TET qualified job seekers who were forcefully removed from their site of agitation in Salt Lake midnight yesterday, and the political protests have now are being seen on the streets. Earlier in the day, it was the left SFI, DYFI who organized a similar protest and clashed with the police. The ABVP has also clashed with the police on similar issue, and now you can see the BJP, the BJP Yuva Morcha now on the streets of Kolkata. The protesters are only making this the political protesters, the political parties. It's not just the BJP, it's the Congress, the left, and other organizations as well, which are hitting the roads today in protest against police action. So this is clearly a political response to the police action. The government says it is only trying to follow proper procedure to give recruitment. Why are you holding the protest still?
No! Why will they appear for interview?
Okay.
They have already appeared for interview.
And have not qualified.
Their training has been done.
Okay.
Why will they appear for interview again?
Okay.
There are 16,500 vacancy. She has said in 2020.
Okay.
Why isn't she keeping her promise?
Okay.
Why is she dilly-dallying now?
Okay.
She has her statement for every other issue.
Okay.
And she doesn't want to comment on this issue.
Okay.
She's saying my education minister will speak. It was horrendous, shameful, and Mamata Banerjee needs to resign. If she can't keep her promise as the Chief Minister of West Bengal, let her resign. We will take care of these students. We will take care of these candidates. If standing by these candidates and being vocal with them, it means politics for TMC, I I will do 100 times. I will do this kind of politics.
Well, with that, it's a wrap from my side. On the other hand, Shivani gets you a special from Melbourne.
Hello and welcome everyone. You're watching our special presentation on the T20 World Cup, Kings of T20, straight from Melbourne, Australia. I'm Shivani Gupta and I'm joining you from the Melbourne Cricket Ground, and this is where India will be opening up their campaign this edition of the World Cup against arch rivals Pakistan. Over the next 1 hour, we'll get you the latest that you need to know, not just from the Indian camp, the Pakistan camp, but an overall view of the World Cup this year and its top contenders, starting, of course, with Australia, the hosts, and the defending champions. In a bit from now, former India cricketers Maninder Singh and Deepdas Gupta will be joining me. They'll be giving us their expert opinion on just who looks the best bet this World Cup. But before that, let's set up the T20 World Cup 2022 for you.
The World T20 Cricket Carnival is back in less than a year, and this time it is set to be the biggest yet, with 16 teams playing 45 matches. Australia, the reigning champions, hosts and odds-on favourites to lift the trophy again. The hosts are in Group 1 and will face stiff competition from New Zealand, England and Afghanistan, who are known for punching above their weight. The Black Caps have lost just 2 T20Is this calendar year, and their recent form at home in the Tri-Series against Pakistan and Bangladesh looked solid. England have been a consistent force in white ball cricket for some years, and this tournament will mark Jos Buttler captaining his first ever ICC white ball event. Injuries have hampered England's preparations, with key talents like Johnny Bairstow and Jofra Archer both missing out on a place in the squad. Afghanistan are high on confidence after they managed to reach the Super 4 stage in the recently held Asia Cup. Talking of Group 2, the world number 1 T20I side India want to forget their group stage elimination of their last World T20 and can boast of one of the most balanced teams on paper. The injury to Jasprit Bumrah is a blow and will test the depth of the bench strength. The men in blue will face the most difficult test at the very beginning of the highly anticipated clash against Pakistan on Sunday. Pakistan comes high on confidence after winning the Tri-Nation Series, and the comeback of Shaheen Afridi will make its famed pace attack even more lethal. With Babar Azam and Rizwan at the top of the order, Pak is capable of demolishing any team on its day, but will have to fight the tag of being the most inconsistent team. South Africa, on the other hand, has had a strong bowling attack with Kagiso Rabada, Lungi Ngidi and Andrich Nokia forming an imposing seam bowling attack. Bangladesh are looking to shake their tag as underachievers. Despite the game-changing players in its ranks, the Tigers have won just 7 of their 33 matches in the World T20. The T20 World Cup will also see newly amended ICC rules coming into effect. Running out a non-striker will no longer be unfair play, while non-strikers will have to stay at the same end even if the batters have crossed on a catch. The ICC has also relaxed rules relating to COVID-19, allowing all players to take the field.
Will we see a new T20 World Cup champion, or will one of the former champions do an encore? And can the Indian team perform up to its potential? After a rather forgettable outing in the last edition, the pressure is certainly on Rohit Sharma and his men. This World Cup will provide a lot of answers for world cricket, but especially for Indian cricket. With camera person Guneet Singh Bedi in Melbourne, Shivani Gupta for CNN News 18. And joining me now are former India cricketers Maninder Singh and Deepdas Gupta. Gentlemen, a warm welcome to all of you, even though I'm joining you from Melbourne. You're joining us from various parts of India. But, we have the World Cup upon us now. We've been building up to this tournament. Maninder Paji, why don't I come to you first up for quite some time? And this is first and foremost an opportunity for India to redeem themselves, isn't it? Because the last World Cup campaign, we all remember it very painfully still. It was nothing to write home about.
See, we expect too much from the Indian team. Whenever they go to play cricket, we are always expecting them to win all the time, which is not going to happen. And, T20 format, it's not really easy. Unless and until you get that rhythm from the first game, it becomes difficult for the teams to get settled. And T20 format is such, where just one play can take the game away from you because it's just a shorter format, and sometimes the weaker teams also get the better of you. But I'm sure, this time around the Indian team looks pretty balanced, and I'm expecting a lot from them.
Deep, why don't we have your opening comments as well? India is definitely starting as one of the favourites. But do you believe that in this World Cup, as Manipaji is saying, it's the shortest format of the game, it's a T20 World Cup, you never know what's going to happen. And there are almost 6-7 teams that will feel that they are contenders for the title.
True. I think this is going to be one of the most competitive World Cups. One, because of the format. T20 format is very fickle in many senses. That's one of the reasons it's going to be competitive. And also the fact that these conditions, we're talking about really big grounds here. We're talking about a pitch, conditions which would help the bowlers a bit more. So we're looking at 160, 170 kind of scores on an average here with pace and bounce. So obviously because of the conditions, and also the format, I think this is going to be extremely competitive. And as you rightly mentioned, there would be, good 5-6 teams, you can call them as favorites because, like I said, because of these two factors.
Why don't we begin by talking about Australia now, who are, of course, the hosts. So that is an advantage that they have, but they're also the reigning champions. Last time around, Manipaji, not many gave Australia a chance. They weren't really looking like a team that could lift the title. This was one trophy missing from their cabinet, and they showed the world why they are such a champion side, no matter what year and no matter what conditions. This time, they're actually looking as good as a team needs to be to become the first team to retain the ICC T20 World Cup trophy. And there's only one difference from their squad from last year to this year, and that brings in Tim David into the fray, who himself is a top drawer player.
I think they're a very strong team, and they're going to play in their home conditions, which is going to be a big advantage for them. They're used to the conditions there, they're used to the pitches there, and the crowd is going to back them because it's a good, strong side. Maybe Aaron Finch's last World Cup, and he would like to win, go on a winning note. But otherwise, if you see the balance of the side, I think it's a very, very balanced side. They've got match winners. Matthew Wade has been doing very, very well. He's finished the games pretty well. Aaron Finch, as I said earlier, he's going to give his more than 100%. David Warner is a batsman to look out for because once he gets into that rhythm, then he could win you matches single-handedly. So I think they've got the side, Glenn Maxwell, who's a finisher, Mitchell Marsh, he's been doing well. So I think they're a brilliant side, and playing in home conditions is going to be a big, big advantage. Even though, they won in UAE last year, as you said, nobody gave them a chance. But I think that would have given them a lot of confidence.
Deep, we're talking about Australia. I don't want to leave New Zealand behind because New Zealand again has been a story of so close and yet so far when it comes to lifting ICC trophies. Last time around also they came close, but that white ball jinx always hurts them, isn't it? This time around, do you believe they have it in them to go all the way?
Yes, definitely. New Zealand is again such a amazingly underrated side. Every time there's an ICC event, invariably you'll find them in the top 4. And unfortunately, they've always been the bridesmaid. So yeah, they've got a very good opportunity this time around as well. But having said that, there's so many of them, of those teams, and it's going to be a tough one actually to pick your top 4 as well. But having said that, New Zealand comes an ICC tournament, and there they are. Even though they might not have those huge or massive names and superstars and all, but that's one team. They do know how to play as a unit, as a team, and there's a lot of experience there as well. Experience of playing together, experience of playing T20 cricket per se. So I think all that will come together and should come together. That's what's been happening in last so many years.
Yeah, absolutely. New Zealand have a tendency to get to the knockout stages. They have a tendency recently to even be in finals, but just missing when it comes to the final hurdle. Speaking of knockout stage, the Indian team didn't make it to the semi-finals last time around, and the first improvement they need to make is, one, not lose to Pakistan this time around, Manipaji, and secondly, at least get to the knockout stages. I think anything less than that, and I don't think fans are going to be very, very happy this time around.
I know, we all expect a lot from the Indian team whenever, as I said earlier, whenever they go to play any kind of cricket, and this is special because the first edition the Indian team won, and after that they've not fared very well as you would expect them to. But I think we've got a few match winners in this side. If you see KL Rahul, Rohit Sharma, even though he's not been in very good form, but once he gets going, then he's a match winner for you. Virat Kohli has been doing well. I mean, KL Rahul has got some runs. Surya Kumar Yadav is in tremendous form. And I would somewhere down the line have Rishabh Pant in my side because he's a match winner. He could, change the game around on his own. And I think, as Deepdas Gupta said earlier, the grounds are bigger, the bowlers have an advantage, especially the spinners. So if you see the balance of the Indian bowling side, I think it looks a balanced side as well. So overall, on papers, I think this is a very good Indian side. But it's just that you have to have the initial success. If you're successful in your first game, then you carry that confidence ahead.
I'm going to talk to you about the bowling lineup that you would ideally want to see, because that's where we have, although Rohit Sharma is very clear of the bowling lineup that he wants, but I want to begin by asking you about Rishabh Pant, because there are enough people who feel that Rishabh Pant walks into this playing 11 and he deserves to be in this playing 11. But the trend that the Indian team is following, and I think we know the mind of the team management. They are preferring Dinesh Karthik over Rishabh Pant, and it is very likely, as I watched the Indian practice session today, that Dinesh Karthik is going to walk out in the playing 11. That doesn't leave space for Rishabh Pant. What do you make of the team management's decision then to prefer Dinesh Karthik as the finisher over Rishabh Pant?
Well, personally, ideally speaking, I would have wanted both of them to play. But as you mentioned, the batting unit looks kind of settled. And what we've seen in the last 6 months, that DK has been given a very specific role. And he's been doing a pretty good job of that, to be fair. So unfortunately, as good as Rishabh is, and as Mani Bhaiya mentioned, he is a match winner. There's absolutely no two ways about it.